This is a weekly step meeting with a different speaker each week, speaking on the step of the week for approximately 25 to 30 minutes. And then we will open the meeting for discussion until 7 p.m. Well, that brings us to our speaker, January 18, 2021, Nick, and Doylestown, PA at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. And he will be presenting Step 2. Let's all give Nick a warm welcome. Woo!
Good evening, everybody. My name's Nick. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm grateful to be here. I'm gratefully clean and sober. And let's see, I have a sober date. It's April 19th, 2016. And it's not to brag or boast, but that date actually, I did not choose it, but that date actually has real meaning and value for once. I've had other sober dates that I just didn't really care to, I just wasn't done. So that date has value in my life today. I have a sponsor and a home group. I've been through the steps, and I do my best to take other guys through the steps, those simple things, which I never did before in recovery. And I'm here to talk about Step 2, and I can't tell you I'm not nervous. I always get nervous. I'm not a good public speaker, but good thing I have this book, and I have information, and I did a little bit of homework, and I can use the book, the textbook, to share with you my experience and utilize this information that was given to us. So in Chapter 3, more about alcoholism, most of us have been unwilling to admit we are real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. So right there, talking about insanity, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And definition of insanity, state of being seriously or mentally ill, madness. And then in 12 and 12 sanity, they define sanity as the soundness of mind. And I can relate to that first one quite a bit. The insane thoughts, the insane actions, and the insane thinking, which I thrived on for many years. I loved that whole scene. I love just the craziness, the wildlife, and that's just how I rolled. 12 and 12 also go on to say that therefore in Step 2, it's the rallying point for all of us. Whether agnostic, atheist, or former believer, we can stand together on this step. True humility and an open mind can lead us to faith, and every is an assurance that God will restore us to sanity if we rightly relate ourselves to Him. And I was told Step 2 is about open-mindedness. I was so arrogant and belligerent and closed-minded when I was introduced to AA, my first rehab, and they talked about the big book. They talked about 12 steps at Livingren in 2009. And for those past 7 years, just did the same thing over and over. That insane thing, doing the same thing, expecting different results. And it was not fun. Once that AAC was planted, and I learned a little about my disease. They called it a disease in the rehab. I was in my head. I was like, man, I'm up against something here. I don't know how I'm going to do this on my own. And I tried my way for many years. I tried my own thinking. I tried the will. I tried everything. But tap into this power they talked about. And how do we tap into this power? Well, we do. And in the beginning, they said to go to meetings. Why do we go to meetings? They said if you go to meetings, you find well people, well alcoholics who have been restored to sanity. And I've seen that in meetings, and I'd hate people for it. I'd see them smiling and happy, and I'm not understanding there's work to do, and there's acceptance, and there's open-mindedness needs to be brought to that. I wasn't hearing it. I just wasn't hearing it. And Father Martin, I've seen him in many rehabs. I love his videos. I watched a little bit today. I did a little bit of homework, and he goes to say the wise alcoholic comes to believe in a power greater than himself, outside of oneself, could be restored to sanity. And he also goes to say that we came to meetings, we came to consciousness, and then we came to believe. It's a process. And just like myself, this did not happen overnight. This was a process that took some time for me to gain this strength and a higher power and to believe in something. In the beginning, it was just seeing in other people and believing in that. I didn't believe it, but I saw it in others. So in the beginning, that was my higher power, just seeing the strength in the rooms, and like I say, you want what other people have, and that was a power for me. And I was raised Catholic, and I thought that I had a punishing God who I was condemned to if I didn't repent, if I didn't turn all my sins over and turn over a new leaf and turn it all over to God, that I was going to be damned to hell. And so I thought God hated me for so long. Turns out he was just waiting for me this whole time, and every man, woman, and child, there's that inner God they talk about in the big book. And I wrote down some page numbers here. I'm just going to go through a few things because I like facts. I like factual. I can tell you my story. You all know about the insanity of the drink and all about the craziness of life. And but after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. I mean, that's pretty black and white. I talked about it before about the if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control of the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Lack of power is our dilemma. How do I have a spiritual experience? For me, it was a lot of pain and suffering, and just coming to the point where I had enough, and that voice inside my head, that God conscious, I always had that consciousness that was telling me to do good my whole life, but I pushed it away. It turns out that was God talking to me this whole time, and I just didn't want to hear it. I'm making poor decisions. I'm making bad choices. I'm driving to places I shouldn't be going, sober, making an insane decision to go do it again after what I just put myself through, what I put my family through, and not remember. I have that forgetter, man. It just does not remember, doesn't care to remember. It's going to be different this time. It's not going to get out of hand. I tell myself this stuff. My disease tells me these things. And it goes on to say, much earlier, if we discover we do not need to consider another's conception of God, our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and effective contact with Him. The beautiful thing about this is that there's no set thing that I worship. It's what's in my heart. It's my higher power. It's my prayer and my meditation. As long as I do that and accept God on my understanding, in my heart. That's the beauty of this thing. It's my experience. It's my God, and that could be your God too. Now, do I now believe? Am I willing to believe? That open-mindedness. That maybe I've seen it in others. Maybe I can too. Just to have that shift in my head that just possibly maybe I can too. Instead of I can't, I'm not going to do it, and just being stubborn and arrogant and closed-minded. Talks here on page 48, we finally get beat into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes it's a tedious process. We hope no one else will prejudice for as long as some of us were. And I talked about those 7 years when I just was not ready, I was not done, and I suffered. Having a little bit of the understanding of what I was up against, my disease, and then continually going to do that over and over and over. Dr. Bob talks about it. When you get a head full of AA and a belly full of booze, it's just not fun. It's just ruins drinking for us, and it ruined it for me because at the beginning of I wouldn't even call it a relapse. I never really had any real recovery. It was just dry time. I made that sober, dry decision, insane decision to do it again. I had that doom and gloom aspect my whole life. Like I so negative about everything, and I liked it. I liked the negativity. I liked living that way. I just said, what, I don't want to do good anymore. I tried doing good. I tried that and it didn't get me anywhere. I'm going to get mine. This is how it's going to be. And the book talks about here about just seeing the beauty in all the world, like looking at the forest. We were diverted by the ugliness of some of the trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. my friend Ken says, like, we have this like crazy like choice to make, to either walk with the spirit of the sunlight, or walk in darkness. And us alcoholics have to contemplate this stuff, have to ponder over that. Like, you can be free and happy and walk in the spirit of the sunlight, or walk in death. And as an alcoholic, I have to consider that kind of stuff. Goes on to say here on page 53, when we became alcoholics, crushed by self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fiercely face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or isn't. What was our choice to be? And this book is so black and white in so many ways, and that same way with my drinking. It's either I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And if I don't throw myself into my recovery and be willing to do whatever it takes, I'm gonna suffer. I'm going to do this over and over, or I'm going to die, or like I talked about, go insane, go insane from alcoholism. And I mentioned this before about having, actually we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And I see that in others, guys I work with. I start seeing the lights come on in their eyes, start to shine. They start speaking differently, and they don't see it, and I've seen it, and I've heard other people say it about me when in the beginning, like, you're speaking differently, you're acting differently, and I myself, I don't see that, but I'm following these directions, and I'm throwing myself into AA, and like I start acting like myself. I start acting differently. I start presenting myself differently. I start speaking differently. I start dressing a little differently, and that transformation starts to happen. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that this happens, and I just love AA. This program has saved my life. On page 56 here, talks about an alcoholic confined to a hospital. He was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in the room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? I think he was speaking to himself, and that's me, like, saying, who am I to say there isn't a God? Like, how I was watching this thing about the subconscious and how powerful our minds are in meditation, and going into deep meditation, the things that can be, brought to light, that I was closed-minded to before. I didn't want to hear it. Like, I said, I don't want to meditate because I just sit there and think too much, and I'll go, it's like I get too anxious. Through practice and prayer and practice through this thing, you come to that point where meditation is essential. I have to have this in the morning. I have to have quiet time. I have to follow these steps and do these things just to remain happy, joyous, and free, like it talks about. And this man recounts that he tumbled out of his bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by conviction of the presence of God. And I had my white light experience in a rehab, in a stinky rehab bed, pouring my eyes out, crying, begging God to help me. And I put some stuff on paper, and for once I was honest with myself and honest with somebody. I went and talked to a counselor and told him everything, and just, man, what a relief that was to say, I give in, man. That's step one. I'm like, I give in, and that was my my spiritual experience right there. Was the beginning of it. It poured over him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. I talk about that, just tearing down those walls and saying, I need help, and I'm going to tear this wall down because it's keeping me sick, and learning that, I have to open up. I have to talk about these things, or I'm just going to sit on it. He stood in the presence of an infinite power and love. He had stepped from a bridge to shore for the first time. He lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. And having that open-mindedness and the willingness beaten into me, I finally said, my life is worth living. I'm gonna do whatever they ask me for once, and just say okay to whatever they tell me. There was no more fight left. And the book talks about just stop fighting everything, and even alcohol. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, this revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him. We drew near to him. He disclosed himself to us. And that's all. A lot of stuff's in We Agnostics. I'm so glad I have this book to follow direction. You know, I get nervous when guys ask me to sponsor them, but then I remember I have this textbook here just to go through this book and use this information in this book just to, you know, it's not all about me anymore. It's about, you know, using the resources we have in AA to help others. You know, I can share my experience with this guy, but I can always go back to this book and find something that brings more stuff to light that I can, you know, be more efficient to help people, be of maximum service. In the process of coming to believe, like I said about this, talks about it was a white light, like a thunderbolt, and that's for some that does happen. You know, mine was a little bit of both. It was that experience I had in the rehab, and then it was the process that grows. You know, if I keep searching for God, I'm going to find Him. If I search for Him on a daily basis, make prayer and meditation an essential part of my recovery. You know, God doesn't make too hard of terms if we seek Him out, if we accept Him, whatever works for you, higher power, whatever you want to call it. Anything but ourselves, really. We get out of ourselves and just be open-minded that there's something else out there that's been, I know something's been watching over me my whole life. I cannot doubt that. Places I've been and stuff I've done, and something was always looking over me. And you know, I call them good omens. I was driving down there, and stuff would pop out at me like a billboard or like a license plate, and like telling me this is a bad idea, and I'd push it away. And that was, in a way, that was like God talking to me, saying, you know, I'm here for you. Just you know, open your heart, open your mind. I'm here. And another way to look at it, I asked my grandfather asked me once, you know, what does God mean to me? And I said, I didn't know. I really don't know. And he said, God is love. And if you have love in your life and love in your heart, you know, and I had to get rid of all hate. I had so much hate and so much anger. I had to be free of that, you know, and I heard it in these meetings. I heard it in speakers. I heard it in the book. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't done until, like I said, I got so beaten that I made that decision that I was going to do this or I was going to die. And we talked about it, you know, when Dave was reading the steps, like, we got to have fun with this. We have to have fun. I've been driven into me by my sponsor, like, if we're not laughing, yes, this is serious business. This is life or death. But if we're not having fun, we're not going to stay here. So you got to have fun with your recovery. You know, rule number 62, don't take yourself too seriously, and I'm super good at that. My dad, like, he drove into me like, you know, I couldn't stand my father for many years. I had so much resentment because all he wanted was good for me. The relationship I have now with my father is completely different. I can be there for him and be a good son and, you know, and a good family member. I'm not going there to show up and take anymore. That shift happened, and that was only through AA, the power of the healing process of AA. And I resented my dad for years because he would just direct me and guide me, and he was stern, and he told me to be, you know, try to teach me to be responsible and accountable. You know, and he gave me constructive criticism, and I hated him for it. And in a way, that was God working through him. He's not the most religious man, but I'd say he's somewhat spiritual. I've been trying to, you know, push him into some Al-Anon stuff, but he's a tough nut. But I just give him unconditional love and show up and be there for him, and that's all I can do. And live by example, you know, live by this. And there's times when he does confide in me and ask me, you know, certain things, and I can bring some AA stuff to him and some recovery stuff and some spiritual stuff. And you know, I shared a morning text with him quite a bit because it helps just to share that with people, and he's one of them. And he thanks me for it. You know, yeah, I don't know how I got off, and that's important to me. You know, talking about important things like my father and the process of being open-minded to just about anything in AA, and what a feeling it is to no matter what comes my way, to be able to just turn it over to God. And that took practice, because I want to take my will back on a daily basis. I want to do things my way. That's the old Nick. And it got me right where I'm at in this chair. So I have to remember that every day, no matter how small, if something pops up, something crops up, and it will, say that quick prayer. so important. One guy I was working with is struggling with the God thing, and he said, I thought I had to pray for 10 minutes on my knees, and he made this big thing. I said, start so simple, like, thank you for my sobriety. Like, wake up in the morning to say something, that's a thank you, and just start with that, and then build on it. And it's painful to watch when guys get the fire lit, and as I did, drift away, without, they start to get things back, and this becomes unnecessary. And I'm guilty of that too. Most importantly, just find somebody who's into these steps, somebody who's in the big book, get a sponsor who is a big book thumper. I couldn't stand it before. They'd come to their meetings, they're big books, and I thought they were, showing off or something. And turns out they're just, trying to bring this information and share it, in the 12 step, just trying to share what they've learned. And that's their responsibility of AA, is to just pass this on. I love AA. I love the big book. I love recovery, and that was not always the case. And jump into it like your life depends on it. Grab hold of somebody, ask for help, tear down the walls, free yourself from yourself, and you can be happy, joyous, and free. Thank you so much for letting me talk. I love AA. I love all you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to open the meeting for sharing. Please limit your sharing to 3 minutes, and please speak up. Please keep your share pertaining to the step or topic.